Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. It is very, very early in the morning on Friday morning. I appreciate you joining us whenever you're watching this and being with us today. I'm headed, as soon as I'm done, I'm headed up to the hospital where Shannon's dad's having surgery today. I'd appreciate if you're a person of faith and prayer is part of your life, if you'd say a prayer for him, I would greatly appreciate it. I want to give you the latest on what's going on with Davante Adams, and then I want to look ahead to the Broncos. I just don't want to spend a lot of time on the Davante Adams drama. But there are a few things I want to address. Uh, First of all, there are 6 teams that I know for a fact are absolutely, and what I think there are a lot more teams that are interested, but I think there are 6 teams that are at least legitimately in the hunt. Late last night, it may have even been early this morning, I heard of another. I've yet to get that confirmed from a second source, so I'm not going to name them because I don't think it would be fair to name a team, but I'm working on that. And I very well may do another podcast here on Friday. We know I'll do on Saturday and Sunday, but on Friday. So we'll get to all that. The 6 teams are the Ravens, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Jets, and the Saints. Um, Again, there's one other one that I uh, heard last night from someone who's always been reliable as a source, but I still want a second confirmation, just based on not on their credibility, but with uh, how they would be connected. I want to get another source on that one. I can tell you of those 6 teams, I would label the Cowboys as the longest shot. I think that's fair. I'm hearing that just about. So let me go back because I mentioned to you the other day. I was told by a source close to the situation that the Raiders would absolutely consider trading Devante if the offer was substantive. I have a few more details now. They have begun and are talking to teams. That is ongoing. I would expect, although I am not reporting, this probably gets resolved next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the earliest. It could pop today. I mean, somebody could just make an offer that says, listen, we just want to get this done. And that could certainly happen. But the Raiders are not in a rush here. And I want to correct a few narratives that I'm hearing that I can tell you are inaccurate. Um, I've seen some narratives from people, that the Raiders are rushing. No, the Raiders are the ones in charge. And I don't need to get into a ton of detail, but the Raiders are not going to make a deal. They're going to get the best deal that is out there for the Raiders. And I think the longer that they just demonstrate, we're not jumping to jump. We're not going to just deal you Devante to whoever you want. This isn't that's not what's going to happen. I think the Jets and the Saints are probably the 2 most. If I was a betting, I don't bet on football. I don't bet on any sport that I cover. I don't bet on sports really at all, but I just don't. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I would never bet on any sport that I covered. I think that's not wise. Um, but I mean, if I were, I would bet that he ends up at the Jets or the Saints. But those teams have to pay a premium. They're gonna have to pay the best price, and that's just the reality. And if I'm the Raiders, it's exactly what I would do. I'm going to get my best deal for me. And throughout the Devante career here, I believe that the Raiders have been um, all about Raiders, Devante, let's make team, team, team. And I think for the first time in this relationship, it's time for the Raiders to be selfish and say, okay, fine, we get the hint. Okay, okay. You want the divorce? You'll get the divorce. But you're not getting the divorce and everything with it. You're not going to walk out of this and control it. This is what you want, fine, but I'll just leave it there. And so I think that would be the wisest move for the Raiders. And I think a lot of details on kind of how this whole thing played out. I want to address a narrative where I am hearing that this all started because of AP allegedly liking a tweet. I can tell you that AP liking a tweet did absolutely nothing to the furtherance of this divorce. That I've heard that from a lot of people. Oh, AP liked a tweet and Davante's like, fine, get me out of here. That is not the narrative that is correct. Just going to leave it there. We'll get into a lot more when this whole situation's resolved because getting into it now, it doesn't matter. The season's on. This is about going to Denver and winning. It's just win, baby. But I promise I'll get into all that later. I'm not doing a I know something you don't. Just setting it to the side. Let's stick with Denver. I'll give you the key details. Um, but I think the Raiders are going to get something good for it. I don't know what that substantive offer is. I know that of all the teams that I told you, they would want a reworking of Davante's deal, which I am told, and I have not spoken to Davante's people on this, but I am told Davante's people are more than willing. I've been told that by more than one of the teams I mentioned, people in the organization, that they believe Davante's people are more than willing to redo and extend his contract, which is what I expected. So that'll be fine. Good for them. And uh, it's going to be interesting to watch how this all develops. And I think you could look at any number of things. You could look at a very, very high draft pick. I think there's a possibility, especially from one or two of the teams of a one. I think it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability. But if you got enough teams bidding and you finally go and say, listen, here's the deal. We'll end this if you give us this. I think there are a couple teams that probably down the road would. I I think that's a possibility. Not a probability, but possibility. I think you could see some players, some really good players that come back to the Raiders. Um, I think you could see players in a draft pick. I think you could see a couple of players. And that's why it's really hard when I tried to define what substantive was, because substantive from one team may be a one, but substantive from another team could very easily be we want these two guys. I've seen some scenarios, won't name any names, where, oh, this disgruntled guy coming here would be great. Well, the Raiders don't need another disgruntled player. And, the Raiders aren't looking to, just dump Davante. They understand he's a very valuable commodity. And let's not pretend he's not a valuable human being, good person. I don't mean that he's not a human being in the least bit, because he is. And I'm going to tell you what, I think Davante's handled this wrongly, but I don't think he's a bad person in the least bit at all. I don't think that's him. I think he's handled this wrongly, in my opinion. But I want to also make it clear I'm not going to trash Davante on his way out the door. I don't think that's, first of all, it's not how I operate, but second of all, I don't think it's accurate. I think the relationship, in my opinion, has just not almost been a fit since about the fourth or fifth week. I think, ooh, you could just kind of sense. And so we'll get into all that at another date. Um, but I think this is just a relationship that really didn't work for a lot of reasons. But they move on. And I think that's the best thing for both parties. Uh, I think it's the very best thing for both parties. And so, but the Raiders understand, hey, we're going to get value. We're not going to give up Davante for something that is not impactful of their franchise. And one thing that I really respect about Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce, for that matter, and I understand that Tom Telesco is the boss and he's the one in charge of the roster. So I'm not trying to pretend like they're equal voices. But I think one thing that AP and Tom Telesco do is they have a very good balance between each other. I don't think either one of them is in panic mode. I know the players aren't in panic mode. They're excited to get to Denver and play football. There's no panic mode on this team. There's no, "Oh, no, what's gonna happen with Devon?" There's none of that. There's not the drama there. I understand why it's with the fans. They care, they're passionate, they wanna know what's going on with their team, but the players are focused on Denver. I'm just gonna tell you, I don't a lot of people have asked me, "Is this a distraction?" I think anything that's going on outside of football is a distraction, but you got kids' birthday parties and you got family that's sick or whatever. And I don't mean distraction from that they're not relevant. And but to get to this level, these guys have to be very focused. And I can tell you, I don't think that the Devante issue is a distraction to anybody. They're locked in and they're ready to go. I believe personally, anybody that was close to this franchise um, saw this coming. Absolutely anybody close, I think, saw this coming. And so it's not a big shock. So again, those 6 teams, I've heard of another, and if I am able to confirm it, I'll tell you who that one is. And again, it's not that the source was bad, it's just because of what their position is. And they don't specifically work for the Raiders or the team that they told me, even though I believe it. I'm just gonna get a second confirmation before I put something out there. So that's there. Do again, I think it could be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, but it could pop now if somebody said, "What's it gonna take to just get this done?" Here. So it certainly could. And but I love that the Raiders understand we got a while here to the trade deadline. So there's no need for us to rush. There may be an injury Sunday and somebody all of a sudden enters the fray who wasn't in the fray. Imagine you're a team that thinks you're going to get them, and you think you're going to get them for 2 players or a second rounder and a player. And all of a sudden, somebody experiences a major injury on Sunday who now steps in the fray. And now, and you know that happens every week in the NFL. And now you got it, the price of poker goes up. So that's what's going on right there. I sincerely do not believe this is a distraction for the team at all. I'm getting a lot of people asking me, "Hey, why don't the Raiders get this done?" Well, there's a lot of things to get done. Okay. Most of the teams aren't going to make a trade that's substantive without a long term deal with Devante. So then they have to basically come up to an agreement on compensation and then give that team permission to talk to Devante's people on a new deal. So there's lots of reasons why it's not because the Raiders don't want to do a deal, and it's not because Devante doesn't want to do a deal. I just think it's the where it is right now, just going to take a little bit of time. All right, moving on to the Denver Broncos. I believe you are going to see the Raiders go up there, and we know this whole year that they've wanted to establish the run. They are feeling very confident, especially after watching the film. They are very confident about their ability to run against Denver. There are some things that they were able to identify on film. Not going to get into them because there's no reason to give trade secrets, but there were some things that they were identified last week on film that they did extremely well. A couple of them were things that they had not done previous well, and a couple things were some things that they just had improved at. So it's stuff they had done before, but they were able to improve at it. I think you're gonna. I think that when the game is over on Sunday, if both Zamir and Alexander are healthy and both play, that you're going to see Alexander is going to have the majority of touches. It's my personal belief that I feel based on just based on what I feel. I think they're going to go up there and be very much they're going to try to control that game at the line of scrimmage and get the run going. I do think you're going to see some more creativity. I thought last week the creativity I talked to you about all training camp with Luke Getsy's offense, you saw last week for the first time. And it wasn't that Luke did a whole lot different. This is why you may remember the week before after the Carolina loss and after watching the film, I said to you, I'm not putting this on Getsy. And I know a lot of people are like, hey, where's this creative offense that you said you saw? It was there, but it's predicated on the ability to run the football. I think you're going to see um, if they go up and are able to do what I believe they can do, which is establishing the run, I think you're going to see even some more creativity in Denver. And I think the more the Raiders make that creativity part of their arsenal and they make the opposing defense cover the entirety of the field. Now, let's talk about that for a minute because I think this is really, really important. Part of their reasoning that they like the stretching out the zone, the wide zone, is because it makes the defense cover the entirety of the field, sideline to sideline, line of scrimmage, all the way back. The more space you create and the more that the defense has to spread out, the more of Getsy's creativity that you're going to get to see. So when you didn't see it, when the Raiders couldn't run at all, I would put it this way. Let's assume you had a Ferrari and you needed uh, a transmission. Now, I think we all would agree a Corvette or a Lamborghini are wonderful cars. But if you had a transmission from a Corvette or a Lamborghini or a King Ranch F350, those are all great transmissions, but they don't work in Getsy's Ferrari. And so it wouldn't be fair to call that, oh, that Ferrari's a piece of junk or that transmission's a piece of junk. There are still very expensive transmissions. They just don't fit in what you have. They want this scheme because they have a ton of weapons. They've got DJ Turner, they've got Trey Tucker, they got Jacoby Myers. I mean, let's not pretend that the wide receiver position for the Raiders is empty. Let's not pretend. Davante is a great one. We understand that. But Davante wasn't even the best offensive player on this team the entire offseason. I told you on numerous occasions. Jacoby Myers is the best offensive player on this team, and it isn't even close. I think the more you see from Jacoby, both as a player and a leader, because he's WR1 now. And I mean, he's always been a WR1, but it's now clear that he is. I think you're going to see him blossom as a leader. Blossom as a leader. I was on a radio show yesterday, and the person said to me, you know, do you see Devante blossoming in a trade? And I said, once Devante leaves here, I'm not going to watch Devante. I said, but I'll tell you who's not getting talked about, and that's Jacoby Myers, who's going to blossom. I think Jacoby is, and again, I'm not downing Devante. I've told you multiple times, I think he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. I stand by that, even with Justin Jefferson and others. I think he is the most. I think Devante Adams is the most talented by God wide receiver in the NFL. But I also don't think he is close to the leader that Jacoby Myers is. I don't think he is. And even though I think he has that entire talent level, I don't think he's been the best offensive player on this team. I think people are going to see Jacoby really blossom. And there's a reason that so many teams wanted Jacoby. I mean, the Patriots, there was legitimate, and I was told this by someone, part of the Patriots organization. There was legitimate anger in Foxborough when they let him go. There was anger. And I was told that anger went all the way to the top. And I was told there was regret on the coaching side that made that decision. So We know about other teams inquiring about Jacoby. We all know, and I'll get into that a whole lot more later when this whole situation's resolved. But I think this is going to be the more that the Raiders are able to run to space guys out, the more they're able to be creative and use, everyone got frustrated the first 2 weeks with the bubble screens. I don't blame you because the bubble screens without the creativity looked bad, but you use those in the running game to spread the field so then you can do more. There was a purpose. It wasn't just a futile attempt of, well, we got to run a play. What do you want to run? Like Henry Winkler and the Water Boy. That wasn't what was going on. They were trying to get some, but that running game has to be there. I expect it to be a dogfight in Denver, and the Raiders win. I could see the Raiders winning this game 24-21. I don't even know that they would get 21. I don't, but 24-14, 24-17, 21-14, somewhere in that range. I don't think they go up there and, blow them out by 20, but they get the win, and that's what matters. Bo Nix has been performing terribly, which if any of you saw Drew Stanton, who is, a quarterback scout, where NFL teams seek out his wisdom every year on the quarterbacks available. If you saw him on this podcast this offseason talking about Bo Nix, I don't think anybody that saw those is surprised. And so they've won football games almost in spite of Bo. Now he's a young guy, and he's a good guy, by the way. I don't know one person that has a bad thing to say about him as a person. I think there's a lot of questions about him as a quarterback. There is a ton of questions about his arm strength. I was talking to an NFL scout yesterday that said I would get everybody up close and dare Bo Nix to beat me deep. He goes, and he told me, he goes, I'd bet my job on it. So I think the way the Raiders are going to game plan this, and they're going to dare Bo Nix to beat them. And I'll tell you right now, I 100% agree with that philosophy. Dare him to beat you. Dare him. And that's the way you handle him. So I expect the Raiders to go up there and get this win. I want to make it clear I don't in any way feel like what's going on with Davante is a distraction to this team. I don't want you to think I'm implying that nobody cares about Devante, because I'm not saying that. I just think it's something that they saw coming. I remember several years ago, I was sitting at dinner with a friend of mine, and we were talking about something, and um, I had found out a couple days before his parents had been divorced, and I said, how did you go through it? How did it affect you?" And he said, "It." He goes, "My parents didn't hate one another, but it was so evident it wasn't a marriage or a good fit." And he goes, and they were civil to each other because we were there and we were kids, but we just kind of knew. So when they finally said, "Hey, we're going to get divorced," we're all like, "Okay." We just kind of knew it. I think that's exactly where this is at. Exactly where this is at. And it doesn't mean that I 100%, and you guys know, I tell you, don't think this is on the Raiders. But it also doesn't mean that I hate Devante or wish him poorly. I hope he goes off and does wonderful, and I'm going to root for him to do well. But I just think it's a divorce that needed to happen. So there you go. Again, I expect big things to come out of the Raiders this weekend, and a real statement win. Now, very, very quickly, because I've had a bunch asked, do I think Max is playing? Here's exactly what I think. I know Max wants to play. I believe Max thinks he's going to play. I do. I don't know that it's going to be up to Max. The Raiders don't need Max Crosby to go win that game. Would he help? Oh my gosh, yes. But there's a lot of meat and potatoes of this schedule coming up that they cannot win without Max. If you're able to buy him another week, I sure love the idea. If it were my call and I'm AP, I would look at him and say, "Brother, I love you, but you ain't playing." And I'm not even taking you to Denver because I don't want to take a chance that you sneak out there in somebody else's uniform and try to play because we all know that's what Max would do. But that's just him. He's never going, I mean, unless he absolutely has to, he's just not going to miss. And so that's why everybody loves Max. So that's what I think. I think the Raiders go up there and get this win. Again, the deal with Devante could pop, but if it did, it would just be because somebody said, okay, what's the cost going to be to get this done now? I think Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. It could even go a little bit longer because if more people start getting in the fray, the Raiders are just going to sit back and go, okay, they hold the cards. They hold the cards. And the Raiders are going to get better after this trade, in my opinion. We'll find out. And if they don't, I'll tell you I don't think they did. But we'll find out. Again, if you're a person of faith, I would greatly appreciate prayers for my father-in-law today. And I don't normally you call him my father-in-law because I look at him as a dad and I love him dearly. He's a good man and a godly man and a great grandpa and a great husband, a great father, and a good guy. So appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful day. God bless you.